Have you ever paused in the middle of a perfectly normal day and felt like a stranger to your own routine? That low-level hum of alienation isn't a glitch, it's a symptom. The human brain is an energy-hoarding machine. It desperately craves the path of least resistance. We default to what is called popular thinking, doing and believing what everyone else does simply because they are doing it. It requires 0 calories, 0 effort. Over time, we invest heavily in being average. We build careers, relationships, and daily habits around this comfortable, borrowed consensus. To confront the possibility that this consensus is wrong triggers a massive spike of cognitive dissonance. So we look away. This psychological comfort zone functions as a high-walled enclosure. It acts as a persistent barrier that actively blocks any meaningful engagement with the world outside your existing habits.
Consider the true story of a physics class lining up in a schoolyard to look through a telescope at a planet and its moons. Student after student stepped up, peered into the eyepiece, and nodded in agreement, eager to fit in. Finally, the last student looked through the lens and reported that everything was pitch black. The teacher walked over, looked at the device, and realized the lens cap was still securely attached. No one had seen a thing. Popular thinking involves the active suspension of your own intellect. You agree with the group to secure your place in the line, even when you are staring into the dark. Here is the unvarnished truth. Authentic thinking is grueling, strenuous labor. It is an exceptionally rare activity. Albert Einstein noted that because thinking is so hard, very few actually do it. That gnawing discomfort, that sense of being alienated from your own routine, that is the first positive symptom of your mind waking up to the collective delusion. Breaking the default requires a deliberate cognitive rewiring, and the first step feels agonizingly tight. You must engage in realistic thinking. This is the cold, calculated measurement of the gap between what you wish were true and what actually exists. It strips away optimism and forces you to stare directly at the worst-case scenario. To survive this severe assessment, you have to pair it with reflective thinking. You look backward, not to ruminate, but to extract raw data from your past failures. You mentally detach yourself from the intense anxiety and shame of those missteps. Once you remove the emotional baggage, you can view the mechanics of your mistakes with absolute clarity. You develop emotional integrity. Staring brutally into the void of your own reality is the only method to disable the brain's autopilot. Once you map your reality, you must break out of it using creative and big-picture thinking. We are bound by a lockdown of mental limitations. You must aggressively hunt down and eliminate creativity killers. These are the internalized rules and societal scripts telling you, "That's not practical," or "We don't have the time," or "It's never been done." Big picture thinking forces you to step entirely outside the narrow frame of your personal history. You stop viewing problems through the lens of your daily routine and start absorbing the perspectives of those operating in completely different worlds. You learn to sit comfortably with ambiguity. You map out the massive inconsistencies and gaps in accepted logic, and you use your imagination to fill them. Shattering your psychological frame demands an absolute willingness to look foolish to everyone who is still trapped in the line, staring at the lens cap. But there is a lethal trap waiting here. When the chain snaps, absolute mental freedom without structural direction leaves you paralyzed in a dark void. To navigate this open space, you need the architectural blueprint of focused and strategic thinking. This requires rigid discipline. You take massive, abstract ideas and ruthlessly break them down. You define the exact objectives, you audit your resources, you assign people to specific places. Strategy does not kill creativity. Strategy acts as the mandatory landing gear for your wildly unconstrained ideas. Without it, they remain useless abstractions. With a solid strategy in place, possibility thinking becomes your new default state. You actively refuse to let external experts, dusty traditions, or historical fears dictate what is physically possible. You remove the label of impossible and force yourself to dream exactly one size bigger than what feels comfortable. And you don't do this in a vacuum. You engage in shared thinking to crush the myth of the isolated lone genius. If you take a sharp, liberated mind and collide it with other sharp, liberated minds, the potential of a single idea compounds exponentially. You draw out solutions that never existed inside your own head. Ultimate cognitive independence arrives at a paradox. You only reach the limits of your own intellect when you realize that none of us is as smart as all of us. Navigating this gauntlet, discarding the comforting consensus, facing the brutal reality, and strategically landing new ideas shatters the default mind entirely. Developing these rigorous thinking processes is the ultimate form of self-rule. It immunizes your mind. Even under the most oppressive or chaotic circumstances, you maintain control of your internal compass. By applying these frameworks, the mind shifts from a passive trap into a generative resource. It becomes a reliable engine for high-value insights that never taps out as long as the discipline is maintained. Changing your thinking involves a grueling, essential commitment to mental discipline. It represents the moment your actual life finally aligns with your intent.